Can you put the full screen? Okay. Good evening again, and also those on Zoom. My name is Rona, and I've been associated with the Brahma Kumaris for 30 plus years. This is one of the centers of the institution worldwide. And this center has existed for, I don't know, since 1996, 97. And I've been here the past 8 years, 7, 8 years. The main purpose of this center and all the centers of the Brahma Kumaris worldwide is to teach meditation and to educate people about their own mind, the potential of the inner being, and the laws that govern our physical universe. And those who have interest, they can come and study and practice and experience the beauty of a spiritual journey. And one of our regular activities is this Thursday evening, every week except Thanksgiving Thursday. Otherwise, it's every Thursday of the year. Different topics to introduce spiritual ideas, spiritual concepts, and how they relate to our everyday experiences. Today's topic is at peace with the past. We all have memories, we all have situations, relationships, things that we have experienced in the past which might not be so easy to let go. And many of those situations we might experience as a burden. I remember day before yesterday, someone was talking about a situation at work that had been bothering her. And I asked her, when did this happen? 9 years ago. So I asked her, how long did it happen, that situation? She said 2 days. So it happened 2 days, but in here it was 9 years. She carrying it 9 years. And we may think this is absurd, almost. But we all do this to some extent. And maybe not 9 years, I hope not 9 years, but we carry things. And we might not necessarily carry the right things also. So letting go of the past or being at peace with the past partly is this art of sorting out things, what to put in your luggage, in your, what is it, your suitcase. Your mind and your subconscious is like your suitcase, the suitcase of the soul. And you know how people's suitcase sometimes is? Have you seen in the airports also? They have to sit on it to close it. And then it's overweight, they have to take out, and then still they have to sit on it to close it. It is like sometimes a bit hilarious scene in the airport. Or maybe you have been in that yourself situation. You have to pay overweight when you don't want to, or you can't. Sometimes you don't necessarily have that kind of money. And in that suitcase, there are so many things. You can't even decide which to take out. But you go on your holiday and you come back, and half of the things you did not use. Sometimes that happens, no? Sometimes even go just upstate New York, and I carry a trolley, and half of the things I did not use. And the thing that I didn't need was not in there. So the art of packing your suitcase reflects also of the art of our packing our inner suitcase. What do we carry in here? And when your suitcase is heavy, it's not so easy to be flexible. You don't feel free. Because you're carrying this thing, you can't just walk all over freely. Because you have this heavy thing, and then sometimes the wheel breaks, it doesn't roll. So it becomes it can become an uncomfortable situation. Similar with our mind. If we pack our mind with all kinds of memories and images from the past which are useless, our mind becomes heavy. Our mind becomes overweight. Our mind easily becomes a burden. And when our mind is packed with useless things, we cannot easily discern what to do, what not to do, what to decide, what not to decide. What to choose, what not to choose. Where to go, where not to go. And the flexibility, the agility, and the concentration power of the mind and the intellect, it diminishes. So it becomes very, very important, sensible, useful, to learn to declutter the mind. Do you have any examples of how we clutter our mind?
Use of technology and instant gratification of things. I think our thought patterns in general become so fragmented. So concentrating on one concept for greater than 2 to 5 minutes, I think, is like a novel thing now. And then we're switch tasking, like from one thing to the next, back to the first. So there's like almost like an inefficiency and a poor flow of thought, and that affects when we actually have important thoughts to process. Specifically sorting through things from the past, and I find that when I have that type of fragmented thought pattern, it's much harder to come to rational and logical conclusions and letting go. I think that's a pretty common society.
I was, someone had sent me some pictures of New York City 70 years ago or something, no, little less, maybe 60 years ago, at the train station. Next to a picture of that same train station, same angle even of the picture, with people. 60 years ago, they were all dressed, tight suit. newspaper in the hand, attaché bag, standing there waiting. Same image now. Everyone is doing what? On the phone. Either texting or reading or scrolling. It was such a interesting, and also the dress was quite a contrast with now. Today's aim is to just get a little bit of an insight in how our inner workings are and how we can process things from the past without it having burden in us. And if we can at least sort out better and be more aware of what I keep in my suitcase, it would already help a lot. We might not necessarily be able to overnight finish all the rubbish, but at least if I'm beginning to get an insight in how to go about it and to sort, it might help. And just a little bit of the anatomy of consciousness, the human psyche. We have this mind. To see, let's draw it like this. If this is the mind, what happens in your mind? Thoughts pop up. No? All kinds of thoughts pop up in your mind. And what else happens in your mind? Yeah. Thoughts are connected with feelings. No? And so I'm just, what is it? Symbol for feelings. This. And so certain thought patterns give certain feelings. Certain thoughts give certain feelings. What else happens in our mind?
Emotions.
Sorry?
Emotions.
Yeah, feelings, emotions, same category.
Our mind makes
Atti-
imagination.
Certain things of the imagination, but that would fall under the category of thoughts. No, we can have thoughts that are of imaginary things. But thoughts can also be combined with visuals. Visual images, say for example, the face of your boss or your neighbor's dog who barks a lot. Like comes on the screen of your mind. Something like that. That can be definitely there. But some of the thoughts can be also true imagination, or even visuals can sometimes be imaginary. What else happens in our mind? Memories from the past, but memories are more stored in what we call the subconscious. Mind is active. No, there are all kinds of thoughts, but we store memories in what we call the subconscious. And we can have all kinds of memories. Your neighbor's dog biting you 3 years ago. Memory is in the subconscious, and that memory can trigger thoughts in the mind. Every time you see a dog, you think of that neighbor dog, or every time you see that neighbor's dog, you get scared again or angry again. What memories from the past, they trigger thoughts. But in our mind, we also carry certain attitudes. And I'll just use this symbol to symbolize we have certain attitudes which are also inspired by memories or impressions from the past. Now, I'm drawing, sketching this mind very neatly, don't you think? Does our mind look like this? If you could draw it, or if you could take a picture of the mind, it might not look so neatly, orderly. Someone described the mind one time as noodle soup. All these noodles mix in and upside down. So in your mind, to start to get a feel of what is going on and to start to order it, it is useful to know that we also have different types of thoughts, which I just mentioned when we were meditating. You have useful thoughts, or you could also call them necessary thoughts. Thoughts to organize your day, thoughts of for daily, survival also. You need to go to groceries, you have certain appointments, you want to do certain things, the things of your agenda. These are useful thoughts, necessary thoughts, some of them. But most of these noodles are not necessarily necessary thoughts. One of the area of burdens that we carry is that we think the thought repetitively. The same thought again and again and again and again and again. So a repetitive thought or a cyclical thought, thinking of the same thing in cycles again and again and again and again. Those type of thoughts we also have, apart from the necessary and the useful thoughts. Now when it is a repetitive thought, a cyclical thought, how would you call that? A habit? Rumination. But it also becomes useless. Isn't it? The same thing again and again and again. It becomes useless thinking. And if you have useless thinking, it means you are wasting the energy of your mind. Isn't it? And often we are not even aware that this is happening. That we're thinking the same. When you go through your day, often we think the same things. Tomorrow again, the same type of things. Tomorrow again, the same type of things. We're using our mind in a way that wastes our energy, our mental energy. And it might be very possible that we're not doing anything special. But every day, at the end of the day, we are tired, isn't it? And we need to sleep. Why? To turn our brain off. Physiologically, the body gets restored in about 3-4 hours of sleep. But many of us need much more than that to turn off our brains, to get the heat off in our brains. And that heat much of it is because of that useless, repetitive, cyclical thinking. Now we don't have to live like that. This suitcase is often burdened, can't close, overweight, because of all these useless and wasteful and cyclical thoughts. And if I have cyclical thoughts all the time, useless thoughts, what are the feelings?
Tired, irritable.
Tired.
Irritable.
First
angry.
of all, you feel tired and exhausted, and you also feel useless and helpless and hopeless. and lack of perspective, lack of vision, lack of enthusiasm. All of that comes with overuse and almost like abuse of our mind and our mental powers. We don't have to live like that. But we do because we have not been educated to look at this, and we have not educated our mind what to think, how to think, what to think. And so things that happened, we just store it in our subconscious and it keeps triggering thoughts. Things that happen that are unpleasant, we store it. And most of the time, we have the tendency to store in our subconscious things that are unpleasant. You know, a whole day, you did 100 things good. One thing you didn't do good. What will come harassing you? That one thing that you didn't do good. So on top of all this waste, we also then have created this habit to only think and hold on to the things that are not so good. Now, do we have to stay with that? We don't. First of all, whatever happens in the past, instead of feeling the negative emotions, we can also ask ourselves, what did I learn? Or what can I learn from it? And store the lesson instead of storing the burden and the negative feelings and the negative tendencies that came from that. Instead of there is always something to learn. There's always something that I can enrich myself with instead of feeling burdened about the whole situation. Somebody is nasty. How can I deal with that in a more constructive way? Somebody really nasty, saying all kind of nasty thing, poking. How can you deal with that in a constructive way instead of all the time keeping in your subconscious this nasty person image and poking and all these thoughts of frustration and maybe even anger coming all the time in your mind, and you're trying to avoid the person and not wanting to work with the person or not wanting to even see the person, but all these thoughts, you're seeing the person in your mind all the time. How can I deal with a situation like that in a way that is constructive?
You can communicate with the person, and then you can say, instead of blaming you, this is how you feel.
Yeah, you can't communicate.
Yeah.
They're not
you
talking. She doesn't want to talk or he doesn't want to talk. And even
Then
when
you
you
have
talk,
to
they continue
protect
to keep
yourself
on.
and have some space for yourself. And then if it's a close family member or somebody like you are very close, just you need some space from each other. But if somebody is if somebody keeps doing the same thing, you can stay away from that negative energy.
Avoiding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because I
Maybe
think-
Jose, can we have the mic? Yeah.
When I heard that scenario, I was thinking of
What they call it these days? Toxic.
yeah. Usually when I see someone that's like miserable, like I will try to like really empathize and say like there's something deep rooted there that's making them behave in a way that's like that, and it's something that's like out of my control. I'm like I can't really do much about it, and then just try to like be at peace with like that person will like I feel bad for what they're going through, and that's why they're projecting this to the world. And then kind of just move away, like move on.
Excellent. So what you're doing at that moment is you're training your power to be compassionate or understanding. Instead of focusing on the nastiness, you're focusing on your increasing your resilience and your power. You can also increase your power to be patient, your power to be tolerant. And if you look at the situation like that, who will be benefiting? Yeah, exactly. And this is very useful to do for yourself, because most of the time it happens that you can't change the person. Sometimes you can't even talk with them, and even you have tried, still the whole thing. But we need to learn to enrich ourselves from a situation. And some certain situations are not even like that. Say somebody who is close to you, you had been good friends with or so, dies or gets sick. Now you can be endlessly miserable about that, endlessly feeling sad and endlessly feeling loss. And people can carry that for years and be burdened by it and maybe even get depressed. How can I look at a situation like that in a way that instead of it pulling me down, enriches me? Because the situation will not change anyway. And the person will not come back no matter what we do. So how can I internally enrich myself with what has happened, or empower myself with what has happened, instead of burdening myself and putting myself in a downward spiral? Now for that, there is another function within us, which we call the intellect. This is the intellect. And the intellect is not your IQ. The intellect is your wisdom, your perspective on things, your analyzing power and your discerning power. And the intellect is like the guide for the mind. So some thought comes up, nasty neighbor. Thought comes. nasty neighbor, and no matter what, this thought comes. And the intellect can then observe this thought, and we can ask ourselves, what use is this thought for me? And the intellect can then find other types of thoughts, motivate the mind to think about other things, to substitute thoughts, to reinforce other things that are pleasant. But the intellect can also say, okay, nasty neighbor, what is it teaching me? And then learn from it, or enrich yourself or empower yourself by approaching the situation like that. And then drop the feeling of burden. You don't forget what happened, but you don't feel burdened or deprived or lost by it. But you feel it has given you some power, something, some deeper experiences that enrich you. But what has happened with us, or what could have happened with us, is that we have a dull intellect instead of a wise intellect. What could have happened to us is we haven't nurtured our wisdom. We haven't nurtured ourselves with perspective. We haven't nurtured ourselves with asking ourselves what is aim and purpose. No curiosity to grow. And then an intellect that is dull, an intellect that is weak, an intellect that has no broader perspective cannot deal with a mind that is overflowing with useless, cyclical thoughts. And then these useless and cyclical thoughts easily can become negative thoughts and destructive thoughts. And negative feelings and destructive feelings then overflow from a mind like that. And then we feel helpless. And then whatever happens, what comes to us through our body, through our senses, we see certain things, we hear certain things, we experience certain things. This then goes unchecked by the intellect in our subconscious. What is it? Nasty neighbor. Her face will not be like that with a nasty neighbor. It will be like that. Nasty neighbor. And so then that image and those feelings and thoughts go into the subconscious. And then these subconscious impressions again trigger the mind, even when we are not in that seeing the neighbor. Even maybe we have moved somewhere else or we are at work. It's stored here, so it's still coming up. Someone who, for whatever reason, is not in my circle anymore, or someone has died. We carry those impressions instead of learning from it, instead of empowering ourselves. Now we are so conditioned by the habits in our subconscious and by this dull intellect to not be curious anymore, to not be, how do you call it, what is the word? Explorative. How do you say that? Curious, explorative, open. What is there behind this that I can learn? Now, one time, one lady came and she's telling me her father died 4 years ago, and not a day went by that she doesn't feel sad about this. So I asked her, how were you when your father was there? She said, I used to be so happy, I used to be, active, I used to be cheerful. How are you now? She says, most of the time I'm sad. Now 4 years accumulating the sadness. How old was your father when he died? He was 94. That is a good age, no? Isn't it? Isn't it? Simple, there's nothing even deep spiritual about that. 94 is a good age, isn't it? For people to live 94 years is quite a thing. So, but dull intellect cannot reason. Dull intellect, situation that sad. like as if almost we are robots. So on top of that, I asked her, how was the health? His health was good until a year before. And then it deteriorated rapidly, and he was in bed. So what kind of life is that? You want him to live more years in bed? No, of course not. But this is the power of alert intellect, an awake intellect, who reasons and looks at the reality of the thing and puts it in a broader perspective. So I asked her, why did you love your father? She said, my father always wanted the best for me. So I said, do you think he would want you to be like this now? She said, no. So are you doing your father an honor? She didn't think about that. I asked how many good memories you have of him. She said, so many, all those years. Then why you only keep thinking of those final weeks and those final moments? We blow that all out of proportion in our head. And all the good things that you had with him, that doesn't count for anything. You know, and whilst we were talking, I mean, we have a good chemistry going, otherwise I would not necessarily be so direct, but she could take it. But it's shifted her perspective. And today she called me and she said to me, I feel much better. I said, what has changed? She said, nothing really, just my perspective changed. I'm remembering things that were so beautiful and so good, instead of only remembering that limited ID that had become fixated in my mind. You understand? Am I able to express what I'm trying to say? So we can get stuck in a certain mindset, in a certain way of thinking, in a certain way of looking at things. But to be at peace with our past, we need to see bigger perspective. We need to teach our mind how to think and what to think and what not to think. And to use the power of a awakened, enlightened, knowledgeful, alert intellect to tell our mind, hey, what's wrong with you? I don't need to think like that. And all these thoughts that I gave as example are about others and situations, but sometimes we get into this rut about ourselves and thinking very limitedly about ourselves. And then again and again and again and again we just stay in it. We don't need to. We don't need to be burdened by our own past behavior. We behaved like that under the influence of certain, whatever influenced me from within my own memories or whatever happened here. But today is a new day, is a new moment. I can take that past and say, okay, what did I learn from it? And even if I learn nothing, then I can still learn to drop it and start anew. Every day is a new moment, every day is a new opportunity. You want to say anything? Go ahead.
I've been very excited for this lecture, by the way, so
Yeah.
I'm happy that we're having this. I guess my question has to do with the ego specifically. So, say someone's a very forgiving person and they actively choose to forgive people frequently. And at the same time, in doing that, someone doesn't want to be wrong about that forgiveness. But then again, can forgiveness ever be wrong? I don't know. That's the question. But how does one forgive without the attachment of wanting to be right about the forgiveness? Like the choice to forgive someone.
Yeah. First of all, I'm not fully sure if that is what you're aiming at, but first of all, when you forgive, who benefits? Yeah. So the act of forgiving and letting go just frees you, irrespectively of whatever the other circumstances are. So it is always right. But forgiving in that way doesn't mean you become a boxing ball for whatever the situation is, and then go and stand and do allow the same thing to happen again. So forgiving just means you let go of the pain and you learn a lesson. But you can be different the next time, or deal with it differently the next time. So it hasn't really gotten anything to do with the other. It is your protecting your own inner state and your own sanity. Now, all of this can help us to free up space, to become free from this drama of human life, and to begin to awaken to our own inner higher nature, our own potential, and to begin to explore and experience that we are these invisible experiencers, spiritual beings, very different from the human. And if we keep on holding on to our past and situations and our image of ourselves of our past, we are so stuck at the physical level that we can't even begin to open up to the real self. And the real self is a spiritual being. The real self is a being of consciousness. The real self is a guest in this body, a guest on this planet, a traveler through time and space. The real self, the soul, is immortal, imperishable. Body is mortal. All of these things, even the nasty neighbor, it will finish. It doesn't stay forever. It will pass. But you, the being of consciousness, will remain. And to explore much more your potential when you're in that broadened perspective on self. That, how to say, that freedom, to take that freedom by not getting trapped in things that happen. At peace with the past also can means that you can take a step back from the whole story. Because sometimes situations happen, but they happen in the context of a broader thing. And sometimes we cannot see the broader thing. And then we judge the situation in that limited perspective. I'll give a simplistic example. Someone is feeling pain because their hand is in fire. They put the hand in fire and there is pain. And then they're complaining about the pain and complaining about the heat of the fire and why this fire is so nasty and nature is unfair and life is unfair. I am such a good person, why am I in pain? But what is really going on? What what is going on here. I should not ask why is there pain. I should ask why did I put my hand in fire? Instead of blaming the fire, instead of complaining about the fire, I should ask myself, this pain is teaching me. What is it teaching me? Yeah, that this is not such a clever, intelligent thing to do. That this is not an intelligent, is not a clever thing to put my hand and to keep my hand in fire. Nature is trying to tell me, hey, withdraw. And I can be stubborn. I say, I want to put my hand in fire. And then pain just increases. But if I just see pain and pain and pain and pain and not see the bigger context, then I don't understand. But there is a signal, a message coming to me through that pain, telling me something. And often we
Yes,
don't
your question.
see
Yes,
that
exactly.
broader perspective. And using the intellect to see a bigger perspective, to decode the messages that come to us, that is the way to become at ease with the past. Because if I have learned now, okay, fire is not to be messed with. Fire is useful, but not to go and touch it. I have learned. And that is useful for my further journey. To avoid, to help others to avoid getting into fire. It has enriched me, it has made me more wise, it has made me, in a way, more strong and more able to deal with life situations. So to be at ease with the past means we have to put that past in a bigger perspective. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, like intellectual, like using the fire example, like, we're able to intellectualize if the fire is burning us, take our hand out. But I kind of want to use that same example with something like grief, where there's going to be these emotional, intense, like, time of our life, and whenever I ask about how do you deal with grief, it's always like, feel it. Like, don't try and intellectualize grief, or don't try to, like, have a logical thing of getting rid of grief. Like, if we were to replace fire with grief in this scenario, how can we really tap into intellect when your emotions are fighting so hard against it?
Yeah. I gave the example of that person I talked with, her father died. She was grieving. She was grieving, she was sad, she was falling more and more in a depression. But because she broadened her perspective, she realized that she was just focusing on few weeks of her life with her father, instead of all the 94 years that he had and all her life that she had with him and all the beautiful things she learned from him. And that who she is partly because of what he has given her. She forgotten that. She has as if ignored it. And to see that brought her into a different mind space. And that doesn't mean that you're ignoring the pain. It doesn't mean that you are suppressing the pain. It just means you're seeing the relativity of it. And also the unrealistic expectation to have to think that he will live forever, because he won't. And deeper behind the message, the signals she is getting from life, is reflect on life and death. Reflect on the essence of who you are. Come back to the soul. So life is pushing her into a direction of becoming more wise and taking certain positions and reflecting more deeply. Come out of this dull intellect and move here. And so actually there was a time when I worked in psychiatry, and it was a outpatient department clinic, and so we had many patients follow up from hospitalizations, and there was they wanted to shift from one-on-one therapy to group therapy, because there were so many patients and the waiting lists were so long. So they thought if we put them in a group, it will be more efficient. And these were one group, that the first group that we experimented with was women, traumatized women, abused women who had psychotic episodes because of their traumas from the past. And initially everyone was excited, and even they also, now they're bonding and they're sharing their methods to forget, and they're sharing their methods to survive. And so initial 6 months it went okay. But what started happening is that after 6 months they went in more crisis than ever before. Because they were sharing their stories and their hurt and their pain. And now it was not their own only, it was also from everybody else. and they were reliving it and feeling it and refeeling it, and it just triggered more crisis. And it gave me deep insight in how sometimes this position of psychology is that we have to feel it and live it. If you feel it and live it, it becomes bigger. And I'm not saying that we have to ignore it, but maybe we may feel differently if we see a bigger perspective. And from my personal observation in my own life, and also sharing with others, if we see a bigger perspective, we may feel different. And we do feel different. So you don't forget, and you don't ignore or suppress, but your focus is now on generating healthy feelings and healthy emotions. And grief, I feel grief is a signal that we are overlooking things. We are not seeing broad enough. And the other thing is, one moment now, the other thing is, if it has to do with people, we often have the tendency to create a feeling of ownership. My, grandma. She's not mine. I have her on loan. We are both travelers on our own journey, and we meet for a while, and let us cherish that meeting and let us enrich us and empower ourselves from that meeting. But there's no obligation of neither one of them to be together forever. And we know that it's not going to happen. So to look at life in a broader perspective and nurture ourselves and empower ourselves and not feel this is mine. And in this world, one thing that everything in this world has in common is that it is temporary. Isn't it? That is natural. It is normal. But we have created this monster in our head about end. And we have disempowered ourselves because we don't know to deal with end. Whilst end is natural. So maybe if we look at it differently, have a different perspective on life and that, we might not feel grief. You know, there are in certain cultures, in certain countries, when when a baby is born, they get together and they cry. You know why? In like places like rural China and rural Nepal, much of it is now changing. They get together and cry when a baby is born, because in their perspective, that is the worst thing that can happen to someone, to come into this world. This world is so, from their perspective, that is the worst thing. In those same culture, when somebody dies, they have a party. Because that is good. Person is freed from all of this. In our culture, our perspective is, that is the worst thing that can happen, somebody dies. So who's right, who's wrong? It is a question of perspective. And what you feel is connected with that perspective. Now, a perspective that is useful, at least, and maybe even closer to truth, is a perspective that makes us peaceful and harmonious and happy. So whenever there is grief, maybe that is a signal. Broaden your perspective. You wanted to say something, please?
Om Shanti. So when there's a situation where I feel there's grief or some type of unease mentally or some situation, there are times where I feel like I'm thinking from my higher self, which is like from my intellect, and I'm able to logically think about, or from a third person perspective, observe my thoughts and then process them.
Yeah.
But then there are other times when I'm so caught up in the emotions, I feel like I'm inside the web of thoughts and emotions, and I'm in that black box.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we, especially in those situations, go from the black to the red box?
Yeah, yeah. Much of this and the practice of meditation is to work preventive, no? And to use this and to practice when the going is good. Because then you empower yourself and then you don't get trapped so easily and also not so deeply, completely entangled. Because once we are entangled, then it is much more difficult to get out. And emotions are so overwhelming and your intellect is completely as if non-existent. At that time you just cannot help it. So use your time to enrich yourself, to broaden your perspective, to meditate, reflect, when the going is good. Because certain situations will come. There are certain things in life that are inevitable. And sooner or later we have to face them. But we are so unprepared for many of those situations. So use the time that is going is good to be prepared or have an idea how to handle them. But when you are caught in something, then you cannot sit and rationalize. At least that's my personal experience. One of the things that then help is do strenuous physical exercise. Go swimming or running. Preferably don't go sit behind your phone and scroll, because that will just make the intellect more dull. But do some physical exercise or do something creative that you like, something with your hands or just some physical work, and make yourself tired. And usually that has the power to shift it. Don't let it linger on too long. It has the power to shift it. But sooner or later, you will have to strengthen this. No, because those are just like initial little clever methods to temporarily shift. But deeper patterns also need to shift.
Just on that, I've also noticed that when I'm thinking from the place of intellect, I'm able to respond and in healthy or positive, productive ways if it's between me and somebody, relationship-wise.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm in the black box, I feel like come from a place of blaming or
Yeah.
hurt,
Yeah.
and then that can end up also creating hurt for the other person.
Yeah. You externalize everything instead of enriching yourself. Yeah. Don't let the past bring us down. Okay, time has gone. Let's close with a few moments of silence. Thank you. Embrace your past, your present, and then future will be good. But don't use the past to beat up yourself, but use the past to become more wise. Then ultimately you will feel okay. Even things that might not have been pleasant. But if you are more strong afterwards, you still feel some sense of, gratitude or contentment. Okay. Of course, this lecture is not, it's just a start, not to deal with these things, to start the journey, because there is a much larger, wisdom to explore further. Thank you.